We'll have a little conversation here on stage. Please join me in welcoming Alexandra Cousteau.
Hello everyone, it's good to be here.
We're honored to have you here, and we've had some rather lengthy discussions over the last year in the few moments between your rather fierce travel schedule. Where did you just come from?
I actually just got here from the Galapagos, so it's actually fantastic timing to be here because I was in the Galapagos with Lindblad as a National Geographic expert for their trip, and it's not the first time I've gone, but it's an amazing place, and so it never gets old. But it was also a wonderful experience of seeing tourism and conservation in partnership together. Lindblad has a great program where they give back a portion of their proceeds to the conservation of James Island, but they also fund a school, and the people on our boat all wanted to go see that school. They all wanted to see what Lindblad was doing and came back, and they were so excited about that, and that they had a role to play through Lindblad in the protection of that place and the betterment of its people, and it was a great trip.
As I recollect, Lindblad is a member of the ATTA, which we're excited about, and as I read their history years ago, Sven Lindblad, their entire was centered on science, exploration, and engagement. So
yeah, and actually Lindblad and Cousteau go back a long time, because when my grandfather and my father were filming in Antarctica in the early 70s, Lindblad trips were actually provisioning the Calypso. They were bringing crew members, they were bringing mail, they were bringing food and water. So they've always been incredibly supportive of exploration, filmmaking, conservation, and they're just great people.
And I'm not sure how many people recollect, but that Calypso was in the news non-stop in the early 70s for all of their expeditions.
It was a great little ship. It was really a great little ship. Much smaller than you realize.
Yeah. And so you yourself at Blue Legacy International, which is a company that Alexandra founded, are also venturing into the world of adventure tourism more specifically, and you were saying you used to have a rule where you don't bring travelers along. Why is that?
Well, so we make films, and we're constantly on expedition. Sometimes those expeditions are 4, 5, 6 months long. In 2009, we traveled around the world looking at water issues, and then came back to the States, and people said, that was a great expedition. We're just really glad there's no water issues in America. And so we did another expedition across North America in 2010. And you know, we're moving every day, we're shooting and filming. So for people who aren't part of that process, it can be really tedious. We're setting up our shots, we're briefing our interviewees, we're breaking down our shots, and it can be kind of tedious. And it can be tedious to have casual observers on set as well, because they'll walk behind the camera or they'll talk at the wrong moment, and we have to start everything all over. So I always had a really strict rule about never bringing anybody on an expedition so that we could get the work done. But so many people wanted to come, and they said, Alexandra, your film's so great, I wish I could do what you do, I wish I could see what you see. And I thought about it, and I realized, you know, there is a place in what I do for people to come with us and experience some of these places. And so I decided to have a limited series of travel opportunities for people to, in very small number, come with us to some of the most special places I've ever been. And our first location in that series will be the Okawanga Delta in April. So we're partnering up with Wilderness Safaris, who was our host in 2009 when we were filming in the Okawanga, and they're a great outfit. And so they will be our partners in this first one. And we've got room for like 7 or 8 couples to come with us, and I'm just so excited. I can't wait to go back. I mean, the Okawanga Delta.
Announced it yet either.
No, I haven't really announced it yet. We're getting ready to do that, and it's just going to be a once-in-a-lifetime trip. It's just, you know, I explain it kind of like the Galapagos of Africa, because the wildlife is so abundant, around, and it's such a unique and extraordinary place, and it's still largely pristine. And it really is one of the few places in the world where you can see what the whole world used to be like, you know, before we started changing our environment, and it's just a super, super place. I can't wait to go back.
If I could afford it, I would go do that myself.
Well, it's also, you know, it's also a way to raise funds for the organization and continue our work and give back to those communities, because a lot of what I do in my filmmaking is give back to the communities that we visit. You know, a lot of times networks will go and shoot a documentary, and you know, they'll tell the people that they're interviewing or the places that they're going that this will be great for you because you'll be on TV, and in fact it really doesn't change much at all. But all of our content, it becomes freely available to the people in the organization that we've worked with, so that they can continue telling their story after we're gone. And oftentimes that footage is worth a lot of money to them, and something that they could never afford to do on their own. So that has been a really exciting part of what we do, is helping people tell their story. And I think experiencing something firsthand is the best way to help people write themselves into the stories of these extraordinary places that we have in this world.
Along that lines, you and I were talking briefly about, obviously, transformative experiences. We've talked about transformative experiences at our summits for years. We've talked about storytelling for years, and I've been querying Alexandra on what now, because most of us here are very keen on supporting conservation issues, protective measures, on educating the legions of our travelers on how to become better stewards of people, place, the environments they visit and such. And one of the things we're talking about is, what message can we give to this audience? We've got destinations, the tourism boards, we have destination marketers, tour operators, agents, and so on, who are affecting, as Taleb Rifai, Secretary General of the UNWTO, said, 1 billion travelers. You're a storyteller. Connect that for us. What do we do?
Well, I have to say I'm really excited to be here with you all today, because you know, one of the things we talk about at National Geographic, amongst the explorers, but also amongst the leadership, is, you know, what is exploration today? And how do we define that? Because it's not the exploration of my grandfather's time, where you could really be the first to climb Everest, or you really could be the first to find a tribe or something. Today, our world has been explored, you know, not just on foot, but by satellite. Like, we have mapped this entire planet. And so, what role does exploration have in how we understand our world? And I think where we've talked about this issue, and where National Geographic has come down on it, and certainly it's reflected in their new motto, which they changed a few years ago, is inspiring people to protect the planet. Because, you know, thanks to people like Sir Edmund Hillary and Jacques Cousteau and others, we know what we have. You know, we've learned more about our oceans in the past 70 years than ever before in the history of our world. But at the same time, we've lost more of our oceans than ever before. And I think it's incumbent upon us today, now that we know what we have, that we protect it for our children, and that we are able to pass along these treasures to them, so that they can understand the world the way we do. And we understand our world through the experiences that we have in the world. And I think that's what puts all of you in such an incredible position, is that you are, in many ways, the keepers of these places, and the keepers of those experiences. And you help people have these extraordinary, life-changing moments that shifts the lens through which they understand the world. And when we take people to an extraordinary place, it's an opportunity to teach them some important things. And I think part of it is that we never have a neutral impact on our world or on our community. We have a decision to make, and we either make a decision to make a positive difference, or we make a decision to do nothing and have a negative difference. But we are too numerous, and we are too everywhere to not make a difference through our daily choices, even as individuals. So when you have somebody somewhere, they can see the impact that they're having. They can understand how their choices factor into the place that they're visiting, and people's lives in those places. And I think by giving them the opportunity to be part of conservation or human development or whatever, it gives them the opportunity to see that their role really is valuable, so that when they go home, they can apply those lessons to how they live in their own community and get more involved in the conservation of their water resources or something that's important to them. And those changes matter. That shifting of lens really matters. And it's incredibly exciting. I mean, even just last week in the Galapagos, these are seasoned travelers generally who go on these trips with them, but they all had life-changing moments. And maybe it's a moment when sea lions just swim up to you and look you in the eye, or penguin swims by, or whatever. It's different for each person, but they all had that moment, and it was really exciting to see.
We didn't talk about this specifically beforehand, but I'm curious. You led the first National Geographic social media expedition, 17,100 miles throughout the North America, United States and Mexico in particular. And have you seen results from that? Like, you're heavy into advocacy. You deal with political issues. You're at all the most significant organizations affecting the future of a lot of what we do, whether it's United Nations or National Press Club. You've got the science background. You've got the background in policy. Is it working?
What's really interesting is that our moment in time requires us to shape the conversation about the critical issues that we're facing as a community, as local communities and as a global community. And water is at the forefront of what we're facing as a global community, but it's also very individual for each different local community, because we experience water so differently from one place to the next. And where I've decided to focus, and this really was an outcome of my global expedition and then the North American expedition, where I realized that we talk about water in such a fragmented way. Like, on the one hand, we talk about this global water crisis, but none of us really know what that means. Is it about digging wells in Afrika? Is it about the Pacific Gyre and that garbage patch? Is it about shrinking groundwater? What is it? Acid rain? Like, what is it? And from my perspective, we can talk about any of those issues through the lens of watershed first thinking. And you probably haven't heard that term before because I made it up. But I think it's an important concept for us to understand, because watersheds are something that we learn about when we learn about the water cycle in 5th grade, and then we all forget about it. But we all live in a watershed. And that is a system that is incredibly simple and yet complex. Water falls from the sky, it flows down the hills into a river and out to the sea. But there are all these ecosystem services that happen in between. The soil in the forest purifies our water, stores it, re-releases it, as do buffer zones and wetlands. And when we over-allocate that resource, or when we pollute it, we actually reduce that system's ability to provide us with water that is of good enough quality for us to fish, drink, and swim in. And it reduces the distribution of that water equally through time, so that we start having problems with quantity of water. And I would really like the conversation around water to start focusing on watershed first thinking as the lens through which we can understand different issues, because it brings it all together and gives people an opportunity to understand that we're all downstream from one another, and the oceans are downstream from all of us. And if we think about our impact in the context of a watershed, we understand where our water comes from, what happens to it before it reaches us, what happens to it as it flows through our life, and who gets it when we're done. And that gives us very specific opportunities to get involved in solutions to those issues in our own communities. And truly, some of the most inspiring moments I've had as I've traveled, just across the United States, where all of our major watersheds are in crisis. The Colorado River doesn't reach the sea, the Mississippi River ends in a dead zone, and countless other watersheds are threatened everywhere. But communities coming together to take back their water is a truly powerful thing to see. And when people get it, they really get involved, they really make a positive difference. And if everybody just took care of the water in their own backyard, we would see a significant improvement in what we call the global water crisis. And I think that's where we have to start.
Your storytelling's having an impact, and I'm just curious, you know, we've talked about transformative experiences. If people touch it, and they feel it, and they understand it, or at least have a better understanding, and then they come back and influence others. I mean, that's the best way, at least theoretically, to influence other spheres, you know, our personal spheres. You know, we, in a way, and not to tap ourselves on the shoulder, but we are great influencers because we're doing things that a lot of people dream about, right? We're dream makers. It's the industry that we're in, and you're able to tell that story. I wonder how, you know, how do we integrate that watershed message in a way that makes it tangible for them? Like, they have the transformative experience. Do we have tools, resources, things that we can go to help them carry on that torch? And do you think that works?
I do. I mean, I'm a big believer in spreading tools, and I think the best tool that we have available is storytelling. Either experientially, by allowing people to write themselves into a story of a place in a meaningful way, or through television. But I actually chose not to go the television route in 2009 and 2010 because I didn't want to go on this great journey and experience all these things and then distill it down into a 1-hour television special. My grandfather used that to great effect, but it was a very different time in history. And he was always at the forefront of storytelling. I mean, he was doing everything from books to film to radio. He had involvement days, which was sort of a precursor to Earth Day. He even did cartoon books, you know, bande dessinée. And I realized I wanted people to be able to follow along with us. So many people have told me that he was an inspiration to them. I didn't want to just give them a 1-hour film from a 6-month expedition. I wanted them to follow along with us. So everything happened online. You know, it wasn't like an online reality show, I don't mean that, but it was, we were constantly posting photographs, constantly posting short films from 2 to 10 minutes, rough cuts from the day, talking about people that we met that we were really fascinated by, or things that we saw that shocked us through articles and blogging, and we distribute that through our media network. So it goes to everything from National Geographic to Scientific American to the US State Department to Mother Nature Network and all of our nonprofit partners, and in fact all of our content is free. So we encourage people to use it to tell a story. So it's been used by journalists, it's been used by all sorts of organizations, tourism and guiding organizations, just to give context to an issue, tell a story, give insight into what's going on. And
I heard free.
Yeah, it is free. We're a nonprofit, so we can't make profit from our films. Our profit is people sharing it and shaping conversation about these issues with the assistance of our stories.
So we have water-based destinations.
We have a library of over 80 short films that are 2 to 10 minutes in length. Some are interviews, some are longer format films. This was just the first few minutes of a 9-minute film. They're all on Vimeo, YouTube, and on our website. And please, if you find one you like, share it, send it out, put it on loop in your visitor center as the park rangers have done in the Potomac, or, you know, the American Rivers released their list of most endangered rivers in America. Number 1 river was the Potomac River. We had a film about the Potomac, so they used our film to help give people insight into that issue. And so it can be used in so many different ways, and that's really what makes me happy, is when people use our films and you don't even need to ask permission, just send it out into the world.
I think that's incredible, because a lot of our tour operators in particular and destinations do provide tools and such, but sometimes it's just awareness. Is it available? We have many of these tour operators here who are educating our travelers ahead of their trip. And of course, I would encourage you, Jason, we have an assignment, and that's to include more of the videos from Blue Legacy onto adventure.travel, which is our consumer portal. So we'll want to do that very soon. But destinations who are heavily reliant on water-based activities and such would do well to help educate all of the people who are visiting your destination sites.
we've got just a few more moments, and I'd like to just hand it over to you to give us a forward look and motivate us, and what's the call to action? What could we do here?
Well, again, this room is filled with people who are leaders in a field that is changing our world. And I think, there's a big difference between going on vacation and sitting on a beach and drinking Mai Tais, and going on vacation and having an experience that changes your life forever. And I think, the industry that you've chosen is that industry, and it's such an exciting thing. I have seen so many opportunities in my work for people to benefit from the adventure tourism industry. And actually, we were just chatting about the Scarlet Macaws in Belize, and I love Belize. I think it's a beautiful country. And recently, I went up and looked at an organization called Friends of Development and Conservation, who are working really hard to protect scarlet macaws from poaching. And they're struggling with a tiny budget when $20,000 could make the difference between saving a species and losing it. And yet when you go up there and they take you on this river in this little boat and they talk about the issues and they talk about the place, and you have all these scarlet macaws that are flying overhead. It's an incredible life-changing experience. But they don't have an opportunity to take tourists. And if tourists were able to go and know that a portion of what they were spending was going to protect those animals and had the opportunity to donate more if they so chose, we would have a much greater opportunity to protect the scarlet macaws and protect that environment and that beautiful place. So if you ever see an opportunity to get your guests involved in conservation in some of these extraordinary places that you're taking them to, please don't squander that opportunity, because it is what I think will make one of the biggest differences in whether these places endure or whether these places suit our purpose for a while and then are lost. And as the mother of a new child, my little girl is 14 months old, and I think often about the places I knew as a child. Just even sometimes simple places, tide pools that I would spend days in, or little creeks and rivers and streams where I caught frogs and tadpoles and learned to understand water and the land that it shapes and the lives that it influences. And so many of the places that I knew as a child have disappeared. They've disappeared because we weren't careful, or we decided that it was better to build a strip mall or have, a huge hotel. And so those tide pools are covered in slime, and some of the creeks have been filled in. And there are too many examples like that in my own history. And it saddens me because it means that I won't be able to bring my daughter to those places, and I won't be able to share those experiences with her. And so I have to find new places. And I'm sure a lot of you have great suggestions for where I should take her. But we have to protect these places, and we have to pass them on. And sometimes the only way to do that is to get people to experience them with us and care about them as much as we do. And indeed, I think that's what has protected the Galapagos in the face of many people in Ecuador who would like to turn it into another Cancun. And yet that doesn't happen because so many people have learned to love it, and it has such a legacy in this world. And so I would just encourage you to think about that and let other people be part of protecting the places that you love, because that's why you're doing this in the places that you're doing them. And the more people love your places, the easier it will be to protect them for future generations. I mean, my grandfather did say it, right? People protect what they love, but they love what they know.
Yeah. We're at our time's end, but there's a couple of striking coincidences. One's just more personal to me. I learned about 3 days ago that my daughter Moa shares the same birthday as Jacques Cousteau. And I didn't know that until 2 days ago, so I was elated. Also, the theme of storytelling, this was not a setup. She came with the storytelling thing. Of course, I knew she was a good storyteller, but the fact that you bring that to us and encourage us to continue down that path is incredible. And then we're going to have the good fortune here to meet an individual who will talk to us about now what we can do in the world of conservation. So I wanted to thank you. And we're going to close with a sizzle reel from Blue Legacy International.
Yeah, and just for those of you who might be wondering, If you or someone you know would like to join us in the Okawanga in April, there's the entire itinerary and all the information is on our website, alexandracousteau.org/travel. And we'd love to have you be part of that.
There's only 12 couple spots on this, and she's just releasing it here, so it's very exciting.
Breaking news.
Let's roll the reel.